We've all heard of the Guanches, the mysterious indigenous people of the Canary Islands, known for their mummification rituals, cave dwellings, and isolation from the outside world for centuries. But what if they weren't the first people to call these islands home? What if their ancestry was more complex than the simple Berber origin we've long accepted? For the first time, ancient DNA is offering a clearer picture of who really settled the Canary Islands. And it turns out the truth is far more surprising. Before we start, I'm on a road to get 1,000 subscribers as a small channel. If you want to help me, please subscribe. Let's dive into a forgotten chapter of island prehistory. The Canary Islands sit off the northwest coast of Africa, a string of volcanic islands born from fire and shaped by isolation. For centuries, their remoteness preserved a culture unlike any other in the Atlantic. Traditional history holds that the first inhabitants were the Guanches, people believed to be descendants of Berber tribes from North Africa who arrived between the 1st and 4th centuries CE. When Spanish explorers reached the islands in the 14th century, they found populations with no boats, no knowledge of navigation, and languages that seemed to have diverged long ago from mainland tongues. But their origins remained unclear. Were the Guanches truly North African? Were they the first to arrive, or were they simply the last chapter in a longer story? Legends of ancient ships, odd artifacts, and subtle differences between islands raised questions that archaeology alone couldn't fully answer. Now, with genetic science in the mix, the islands are beginning to speak for themselves. Studying ancient DNA in the Canary Islands is no easy feat. The volcanic soils are acidic, the climate is warm and dry, and most human remains are fragile, some little more than dust. For decades, this made genetic study nearly impossible. But a breakthrough came with hybridization capture, a technique that uses custom-designed molecular probes to fish out tiny fragments of ancient DNA from degraded samples. By focusing on specific SNPs, those single points in the genome where variation is common, scientists can now extract detailed genetic information even from damaged bones. Most of the usable material came from teeth and dense petrous bones inside the skull, recovered from dry caves and protected burial sites across the islands. These techniques allowed researchers to sequence dozens of ancient individuals from Gran Canaria, Tenerife, La Palma, and other islands. And for the first time, they could compare these sequences to known populations, both ancient and modern, across Africa, Europe, and beyond. For years, archaeologists uncovered Guanche mummies, cave burials, and stone tools scattered across the islands. Most remains dated between the 3rd and 14th centuries CE, aligning with the idea of a Berber migration from North Africa during Roman times. But there were hints of something older. A few radiocarbon dates stretched back earlier, possibly as far as the 1st century BCE. Roman amphora fragments were even found on Lanzarote, suggesting outsiders may have reached the islands before the Guanches fully settled them, and yet no major pre-Guanche culture had ever been confirmed. Still, the archaeological record puzzled researchers. Some islands showed more advanced agricultural tools, while others retained simpler foraging methods well into the 13th century. Could these differences be cultural? Or did they reflect different waves of migration? With no written records and oral traditions lost after colonization, DNA would become the best tool to uncover the island's hidden population history. When researchers sequenced the genomes of 40 ancient individuals from the Canary Islands, they expected to see strong North African Berber ancestry, and they did. But that wasn't the whole story. These ancient islanders also showed traces of older, more diverse lineages, ancestry linked to Bronze Age Eurasian populations and trans-Saharan groups, not just modern-day North Africans. This meant the early settlers weren't simply recent Berber migrants, but instead descendants of populations who had mixed long before arriving. Surprisingly, the DNA also showed no substantial influence from Iberian or sub-Saharan African groups in the original Guanche population. This supports the idea that the first true settlers came from a genetically distinct North African background with deep prehistoric roots. The genetic profile across islands remained surprisingly consistent, pointing to a shared origin, yet subtle differences hinted at long-term isolation once the islands were settled. In other words, the Guanches weren't just Berber, they were uniquely Canary. The genetic data points to at least 2 episodes of human contact with the Canary Islands. The first and most significant wave involved North African Berber-related groups arriving sometime between the 1st and 4th centuries CE. These people brought with them a mix of ancient genetic signatures, including the Y chromosome haplogroup EM183 and the maternal lineage U6B1, both common in North Africa but rare elsewhere. They established the societies we now know as the Guanches, living in caves, farming and developing local traditions on each island. But another earlier layer of contact may have existed. Roman artifacts and odd burial styles on Lanzarote and Fuerteventura suggest outsiders, perhaps Roman sailors or Berber coastal traders, reached the islands centuries before full settlement began. These earlier visitors may have come and gone without leaving a major genetic footprint, but their presence hints at a longer human connection to the Canaries than we once believed. Settlement, it turns out, wasn't a single event. One of the most surprising findings was how genetically isolated each island's population became after settlement. Despite their shared origins, the Guanche groups on islands like La Palma, Tenerife and Gran Canaria developed unique genetic signatures over time. There was little evidence of inter-island migration or mixing, even though the islands are relatively close. This isolation likely came from a combination of limited seafaring technology and social separation. Small population sizes on each island also led to genetic bottlenecks, where certain lineages became dominant simply due to chance. Over centuries, each island preserved its own genetic fingerprint, locked in by geography and time. Digging deeper into the maternal and paternal lines, scientists found that the Y chromosome, passed down from fathers, was dominated by EM183, a signature lineage of North African Berber populations. A smaller number of males carried RM269, a lineage linked to Bronze Age Europe, possibly reflecting ancient contact or older North African admixture. On the maternal side, mitochondrial DNA told a slightly different story. U6B1A emerged as a founder lineage, found only in the Canary Islands, suggesting it arose after settlement. Other mtDNA types like J1C3H2A and L3B1A reflected a rich mix of Berber and prehistoric West Eurasian ancestry. Together they map an origin both old and layered. The story of the Canary Islands is more than just the tale of the Guanches. It's a window into ancient migration, adaptation and isolation. For years we believed the islands were first settled by simple Berber tribes during the Roman era. But the genetics tell us that these people carried a complex mix of ancestry forged long before they ever reached the Atlantic. They weren't recent migrants. They were descendants of populations shaped by thousands of years of movement across North Africa, the Sahara, and even parts of Bronze Age Europe. And once they arrived, they didn't remain connected to the outside world. Each island developed in near-total isolation, creating distinct societies with unique dialects, burial practices, and genetic patterns. The Canary Islands weren't a footnote in Mediterranean history. They were a chapter of their own, shaped by the vast currents of ancient human movement. And thanks to DNA, we're finally reading that chapter with fresh eyes. Despite these breakthroughs, many questions remain. Most ancient DNA comes from burials dated after the 3rd century CE. But earlier contact, possibly Roman or Paleo-Berber, still lacks direct genetic evidence. Were there short-lived visits that left no descendants? Could earlier settlers have arrived and disappeared without a trace? Researchers are now targeting older archaeological layers and previously overlooked sites, especially on Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. Advances in underwater archaeology may also help, as rising seas have likely submerged early coastal settlements. Every new discovery has the potential to shift the timeline further back and uncover new chapters in the island's deep human story. The Guanches were never just a lost tribe. They were the descendants of a complex ancient population whose story we're only beginning to understand. Ancient DNA reveals that the Canary Islands were settled not by accident, but through human movement shaped by geography, time, and isolation. Their ancestry was North African, but their story belongs to the world. So what other islands hide histories waiting to be unearthed? Let me know in the comments what you think about this unique Atlantic culture. If you enjoyed this dive into ancient migrations, check out the Patreon and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.